So first of all, I grew up like ride or die Republican. My parents are still ride or die Republicans. All through high school, I was a ride or die Republican. And then when I got to working, I was still kind of like pretty conservative. And then right before I got into streaming, I was probably my most conservative. And then I started streaming. And as I went from being broke to making a lot of money, I started to realize like how totally fucked and unfair life was prior to making a lot of money. So over time, over the past like 12 or 13 years, my views have slowly changed to being more left-leaning, basically.
So it caused you making more money to realize how bad it was when you didn't have money.
Usually the opposite, right? Usually from what I've seen, it's like the more money you make, the more conservative you tend to get.
I mean, I can understand from a policy position because people
Right.
don't want to like pay taxes maybe,
Right.
but yeah.
So what made you, while you're making money, to realize that maybe these beliefs that I held are not for me? I don't agree with them. What specifically?
Well, like, so this is something I believe. I firmly believe that conservatives and liberals, everybody on the planet has like the same fundamental values, and like their first order kind of thoughts are all identical. So they want people to be able to be successful. Most people want people to pursue some sort of career and be successful. Conservatives think that the answer to that is leave people alone, no government intervention, make sure the family is healthy, make sure people have enough encouragement in their own lives to pursue what they want, and give people the freedom to explore that. And they should be able to figure that out on their own because it's America, anybody can do anything. Liberals, on the other hand, tend to say some people have some systemic inequities, is the word they like to use now, or inequalities that they can't overcome. So the government needs to step in and kind of like give them a push to help them keep up with other people, essentially. But both of these like things I think stem from the same place where conservatives think this is the best way to be happy and healthy. Liberals think this is the best way to be happy and healthy. Yeah, that's the difference between the two. Wait, what was your initial question?
My question was, when you started making money, what changed your belief? Like, why did making
in
money
terms of why did it
change
change
that?
from one to the other?
Yeah, like what did you realize in that process?
I think that I probably started with that conservative position, but then as I made more money, I started to realize that like with a little bit of help, like for certain people, things can go way differently. And it would probably benefit literally everybody in society to have that little bit of extra help there. So for instance, when I think of like college or college achievement, in my mind, a kid who can go to college and do well in college, nothing financially should ever stop that person. That just shouldn't be possible. If you have the ability to succeed, we need to provide those people with all the tools to succeed. You can argue on a moral, ethical level. You can argue on an economics level because they're going to be a higher taxpayer, contributor to the country, financially, GDP and all that. That would just be like a really good thing to do. In my conservative days, I would probably think like, well, if you're willing to put in the work, get the grades, get the scholarships, you can do it. But then as I get older, I see like, well, sometimes life is bullshit. Sometimes stuff happens. And another thing I noticed was wealthy families' children have a lot of benefits that not wealthy family or poor children don't have, that in a way work like subsidies. They just come from like mom and dad instead of from the government. So like, for instance, something I noticed growing up, when you're poor, you have a very, very, very small tolerance for mistakes. Like I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and I drove between Omaha and Council Bluffs all the time. And anybody that's ever been on I-80 going east to west or west to east, there's potholes all the time. If I pop a tire or God forbid break a wheel, I'm like financially fucked for like 3 months. It's like over. It's the worst thing in the world. So the tolerance for mistakes is really low. Whereas today I could total my car and go buy another one at the dealership like tonight. Like it doesn't matter. So the amount of mistakes that I can make are way different. And normally when you think of from I would critique the conservative perspective, they would say, well, you should be able to pick yourself up and do what you need to do and figure your life out. And if you fuck up, that's your fault. And it's like, I agree if you fuck up, it's your fault. But if you're poor, you can fuck up so many fewer times than the people that are wealthy. You've got such a safety net for mom and dad.
Now, I've seen a lot of poor people have more motivation to succeed because they didn't have those things growing up. And so they don't take them for granted. They don't just ignore them. For them, it's like something to aspire to. Mm-hmm. Whereas, because I went to both a public and a private school, and I've seen a huge difference between them. A lot of the private school kids, most of them did well, but quite a few of them had everything handed to them and just no motivation whatsoever. Whereas the public school kids, a lot of them ended up in really interesting careers because they would push themselves.
Isn't there a saying that like wealth stops
Third generation
most of the time, some percentage, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I mean, I don't think that's true at all. No way. I would fight to the death on that. I went to a private school and then I went to a public college and I was blown the fuck away when I saw the difference in educational outcomes between kids in college and kids at the public. When I went to high school, my freshman book was called College Algebra, and I thought it was just called that to make us feel smart or whatever. And then when I actually got to college and I realized people didn't take algebra until they were in college, that like blew my mind. I'm sure there are Here's another cognitive bias. There's something called survivorship bias, to where, if you see like 1,000 people in a shitty area, the only ones you're going to see after some time are the people that made it out. And then it's tempting to say, well, I know a lot of people from really bad backgrounds that made it out like really well, so maybe everybody can do that. And it's like, well, those are probably the exceptions to the rule rather than the rule itself. Like a really good example, I can even think of this in my own family. I am pretty frugal with my money. I drive a $40,000 car. All of the expenses that I have are generally related to like just where I live. Like I've got like I think $5,000 a month apartment. And then other than that, and then travel for work. I don't like spend any money on anything. I have sweatpants. I've got my own merch on. I don't buy a lot of shit. I just don't. So I save all my money. The reason why I do that is because when I grew up in my family, I'm sure you guys have heard of lifestyle creep. That's like a way of life for my whole family. Make some money, get some more debt, make more money, more liabilities, make more money. That's like everybody in my family does that. And I think everybody picked up financial habits from my parents. I saw what everybody else was doing. I was like, I'm going to do the exact opposite because this sounds horrible. So you could look at me and go, oh, well, look, see, because your parents are so kind of like financially bad, you became really financially good. So like maybe that was good for you. And I was like, maybe, but the rest of my like 6 siblings are financially horrible. So I'm probably the exception there rather than the rule.
How much of that do you think just comes down to the person though? That's just who they are. They tend to gravitate towards that. You naturally gravitate towards saving. That's just you in a nutshell versus your environment.
I mean, it's the reality is there's probably like a really complicated confluence of environmental factors that kind of shape you as you grow up, along with some biological ones. And who's to say like what is the thing or not that pushed you in one direction? Like maybe because I played a lot of RPGs growing up and I saved all of my potions for like the final boss. Maybe that's why I don't spend my money. Like I don't know. Maybe
it's funny. I was the same way.
Of course you were. I was the same way too.
I saved everything. I had this one app on my phone. It's like this car racing game. I have millions of coins on there and I've not spent any.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows why anybody turns out the way they do? It's hard to say, but like I could think there's like 50 million potential reasons why. Yeah.